Hi, welcome to the Woman Why podcast. I'm Peta Sklars from Los Angeles, California. And the purpose of this podcast is to read my blog post that I started in January of 2018. And I have so many women that follow me on Instagram and subscribe to my email list at womanwhy.com in order to read my blog every week. But I thought, if you don't have time to sit down and read it and you just want to listen to it in the car, I'm going to put all of my blog posts on a podcast so that you can just listen. And that might be an easier way to communicate. So this one is from March 3rd, 2018, and it's called In the Moment. So I went to an old school throwback jam concert last night, which was basically an 80s dance party. It only took up half of the concert area because they couldn't sell enough tickets to fill the whole place. But it felt like the whole city was there as no one sat down for the entire concert, but instead stood up and sang every song and danced. If you were lucky enough to be in your 20s in the 1980s, my guess is that you are smiling right now, remembering the days of dancing with your girlfriends with your big hair and your shoulder pads. And also you are remembering that we sweated, were silly, tried new dance moves, and looked like dorks, but we didn't care. There was no iPhones to capture the moment. It was just the moment right there and then. There was nothing better than hanging with girlfriends and dancing for hours on a Friday night. Maybe the 20-somethings nowadays have that same feeling of freedom and invincibility as I did then. Maybe it is just an age thing. But there is something to be said for being able to let loose and dance without worrying that your picture is going to appear on social media the next day in an unflattering pose. Don't get me wrong, I am a fan of social media as I love using Instagram to write my blog. I didn't have these outlets in the 80s, but I just wonder if being in the moment is now a lost art. I have to remind myself now to be in the moment. I have to remember to breathe and really think about being in the moment, which seems ironic. I didn't used to have to remind myself to be in the moment. When I hear 80s dance music, the memories that came back to me are filled with movement, laughing, sweating, and leaving every last drop of energy I had on the dance floor. I don't have many pictures of these days, and I wish I did. For all the times I went out dancing, I only found one picture. It was in the days when the photos had the date printed on them, so I know the picture was taken January 18th, 1989. I don't remember who took the picture or whose house we were in, but I do remember my blonde friend I was with, Catherine. We met at my first job out of college. She was a rebel who took ecstasy and didn't go to college, but instead traveled Europe with her college money. She was worldly to me, as she seemed to live her life free of the constraints of what others thought of her. She dated a Persian man in the days when that was considered taboo. He only had been in the country for a few years and had a charming accent and a bunch of mysterious Persian friends who were beautiful with their dark eyes and shy smiles. I admired her because she just seemed to know what she wanted and didn't care what others thought. She helped me get my first apartment when I took a job in San Francisco. An acquaintance of hers needed a roommate, and she gave me their number. I lost touch with her shortly after that. It was almost as if she came into my life to help me transition from college to the real world, and then she was gone. I moved into San Francisco and worked in the financial district as the 80s became the 90s. Now I had rent to pay and a career to focus on. So although I still went out dancing, it wasn't the same uninhibited freedom I felt before I started to focus on getting serious about my life. Most of what is left of the 80s is in my foggy memory, but it seems to all come back when I listen to the music. That feeling that the world was mine. I was powerful with my big hair and big shoulder pads, and it meant something that I knew all the words to Rob, Bass, and DJ Easy songs, It Takes Two. That was important. That is why last night when I was at the concert, I stood up for the entire concert with everyone else there and danced and sang all the songs. And I was sad when it was over. Last night, that girl that lived in the moment without thinking about it was back, and it felt great. So that was a concert I went to in Portland, Oregon, and it was the 80s. They played all like 80s cover music. So that was a fun night, and it brought me back to going out dancing in college and in San Francisco and just letting loose. I used to love to go dancing when I was in San Francisco. I used to go dancing every single weekend, and I would just go with girlfriends and just dance for hours at a time. It's a great stress relief, and it just made me feel so good. And I loved it. It was really fun. So this was a great kind of a fun little blog called In the Moment, just remembering those days and how fun they were and how in the moment we used to be and how I used to feel like anything in the world was possible. Like I just felt so invincible in my 20s. And, it's an amazing feeling. And just to kind of remember that feeling and remember that was a part of me. And really that feeling has no age. And I can feel that feeling now if I choose to call upon it. So it's nice to remember those days and remember those feelings and say, I'm still that girl. I'm still that adventurous person. And, I can still be invincible and go out dancing and feel all that. So that was a fun one. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, again, I'm at WomanWhy. My website is womanwhy.com. And thank you so much for following my journey.